الحمد لله الحمد لله خالق الوجود من العدم وجاعل النور من الظلم ومخرج الصبر من الألم وملقي التوبة على الندم فنشكره على المصائب كما نشكره على النعم ونصلي على رسوله الأكرم ذي الشرف الأشم والنور الأتم والكتاب المحكم وكمال النبيين والخاتم سيد ولد آدم الذي بشر به عيسى بن مريم ودعا لبعثته إبراهيم عليه السلام حين كان يرفع قواعد بيت الله المحرم فصلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى أتباعه خير الأمم الذين بارك الله بهم كافة الناس العرب منهم والعجم. فالحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا. والحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا. والحمد لله الذي نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله أرسله الله تعالى بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. فصلى الله عليه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قال فعلتها إذن وأنا من الضالين ففررت منكم لما خفتكم فوهب لي ربي حكما وجعلني من المرسلين وتلك نعمة تمنها علي أن عبدت بني إسرائيل. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم ثبتنا عند الموت بلا إله إلا الله واللهم اجعلنا من الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر آمين يا رب العالمين. Today's khutbah is dedicated to the response of Musa alayhi salam. I dedicated one part of that to the last khutbah where I spoke about how he took on and he acknowledged what was worthy of guilt and addressed it. But he did not take shame on himself. So that was the kind of the fundamental point that was being made the last time. But Allah Azza wa Jal decided in His wisdom that He will tell us the monologue that is kind of inserted inside of this dialogue coming from Musa alayhi salam before he tells us the Pharaoh's response. There are 3 ayat in a row that are just talking about what Musa alayhi salam said. So I want to lay all of that out for you, and then we'll unpack some of those things and what we can learn from that for ourselves. So the first thing, قَالَ فَعَلْتُهَا إِذًا وَأَنَا مِنَ الضَّالِّينَ. He said, I did it at the time, and I was from those that were lost. So he's referring to the act of accidentally having killed, which we unpacked before. Important to note here is that the Pharaoh didn't actually openly come out and say, you killed someone. He didn't say, قَالَ قَتَلْتَ نَفْسًا وَأَنْتَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. You killed somebody and you're denying it. Or you're from those who deny. He said, قَالَ وَفَعَلْتَ فَعْلَتَكَ الَّتِي فَعَلْتَ. You did that act of yours that you did. Now when you tell somebody, you know what you did, right? You did that thing that you did. You didn't spell out what they did, right? And so why would somebody do that? Why would somebody purposely make the accusation ambiguous and not spell it out? This is actually kind of a psychological tactic. And the reason it is done is to make someone feel like, listen, what you did is pretty humiliating. And there are some people here in the room that may not know the whole story. But if you want, I can humiliate you further and unpack the entire thing, right? And it's almost as if the person that is being spoken to is hearing, he just said, I did the thing that I did, but he didn't come out and say it. I bet he's going to say, you start fearing or getting anxiety that he's going to open it up. He's going to unveil that ugly secret. So this is a way of kind of psychological blackmail. I better know my place because I don't want to face the consequences of this person publicly humiliating me and coming out with saying exactly what they're going to accuse me of saying, right? So this is actually a way of, letting someone know I have dirt on you, I have something on you, and you better know your place before I humiliate you, right? I mean, obviously the Pharaoh is the judge, jury, and the executioner. So he can literally not even say anything and have him executed. He can do that. There's no reason for him to use these words except he's engaged in a psychological war at this point. And he's trying to instill a kind of emotional control by causing Musa alayhi salam anxiety, by making him afraid of what will come out of, what will he say next? What will he expose about me next, right? And this is his way of putting him in a corner to see if this tactic will work. So this is one of the other tactics that the Pharaoh was using. Now what Musa alayhi salam does, one, clearly he isn't afraid of it coming out because he is responsible for what happened. And if somebody wants to use that and characterize it in a certain way, that's up to them. That's not under his control. What is going to come out of the Fir'aun's mouth and what is going to be said about him cannot be withheld, which is true of you and me. If somebody's going to say something about me or do something to me or spread something about, there's no way I can control that. You and I think we can control it, and maybe we feel like we can hand over control to this person. If we do what they want us to do, maybe then they won't say something about us. Maybe there'll be a quid pro quo, like I'll give in to my demands, I'll back off, I'll be as you want me to be, I'll become submissive, and then you won't say the things that you want to be, you have the power to say about me, right? And this is actually a means of control. Musa alayhi salam he's over it, he's done. He's like, I did make a mistake, and if you want to use that, then you go ahead. But since you didn't expose it in such explicit language, I don't have to do that to myself either. I don't have to fall on the sword, if you will. So what does he say? He says, فَعَلْتُهَا إِذًا. In fact, I did do it at the time. I did do it at the time. So he's also being ambiguous. He's not spelling it out either, right? It's as if he's saying, if Fir'aun's not going to expose me, why should I expose myself? But there's other things. The Pharaoh said, you did what you did, and you have done wrong. And you're from those who deny. Now, there's a context to what Musa alayhi salam did. And we talked about one dimension of that last time. There's a context to what he did. It was an accident. And it looked like one person was wrongly killing another. So there's a story behind what happened. And there's a rational explanation for what led to that tragic accident. There is. And that would be the full, he is literally standing in trial. So this is a place for him to come out and say, this is what actually happened. This is what really happened. And in a courtroom, you do want to bring out the entire story. That's logical. You're supposed to actually provide the entire context. But Musa alayhi salam, in his genius, realizes something. This is not a real courtroom. This is not being said so that we get to justice. This is being said so I am put in my place. If the agenda is justice, and the judge is unbiased, then you should present all the evidences. You should bring things to light. You should explain yourself. But if you know that the agenda is injustice, this trial is a circus, and there are already established biases in place, there's no reason for you to explain yourself, because explaining yourself will also be turned and manipulated in some way. So there's no reason to offer any rationales and just simply say, I did it. Now, here's the worst case scenario. This is often not thought about. When Fir'aun says you did what you did, can that what you did, that unstated crime, can that be exaggerated? Can it be turned into something else entirely? Yeah, it can take a life of its own, right? It can. You can slap on, how news spreads and news mutates, right? And it gets exaggerated. So it may have been one thing, but by the time it reaches 1 million people, it's something else entirely, right? Kids in America, we play this game called telephone, we used to, not anymore because we don't socialize, but you have children in a group and you have one child whisper to the next child something, and then the next person whispers it, the next person whispers it, and they each whisper to the person next to them. And the first person said something and the last person said, it's just supposed to say exactly the same thing. So here's the fun part. I did this in this masjid. I did it one time. And I whispered to the first child, Bob punched Joe. That's what I said, Bob punched Joe. And they whisper, 70, 80 kids. By the 80th kid, so what did you hear? He said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So when word travels, people mishear, things get exaggerated, everybody adds their own little thing. I think that's what I heard. Must have been something aside. I don't know what the transformation process was or where things got lost, but that talk about isnad, right? So the point is, when he says you did what you did, the Pharaoh may have some very exaggerated claim in mind. And it might be, Musa might feel the need to say, listen, you may have added on quite a bit to the original story. Let me clear the record. Right? You feel the need to clear the record because now so much more is being said about what you did than what you actually did. Right? So what he did, fundamentally, what he did is wrong. But there may be way more added that is also wrong, but that's not what he did. Right? So now he's put in a trapped kind of a situation. So if he says, no, I did do it, but I didn't do this. Oh, you're making excuses, huh? Oh, you just think it's not a big deal, huh? Or you're just denying it. So he knows that anytime he tries to clear the record and get to exactly his crime, that can only happen when you're in an actual court with an actual judge. Here, anything you say and do will actually be manipulated against you. So he keeps the ambiguous and doesn't say anything more. He said, I did it at the time. Now, can you imagine in the courtroom, everybody who's listening to him is using their own imagination on what that it is that he's admitting to. And it's no longer his concern. He's no longer worried, what will this person imagine I did? What will that person imagine I did? I better correct their opinion of me and their opinion of me and their opinion of me. He's no longer concerned with the perception of others. He's let that go because he knows that's out of his control. There's nothing he can do about that. There's nothing, for some people, there's nothing he can do to set the record straight. They've already passed their judgment. For other people, they are not qualified to understand it. They're not in a position to understand it. So, but there is something he should, he comes out and says about himself, and I was from those that were lost. I did slip up. Dalla in Arabic, to lose your way. I lost my way. He owns up to it. But then which is a very brave thing to say, by the way, for someone to come and actually admit where they were wrong or they messed up. But he doesn't come out and say exactly in what way was he wrong, which is a kind of an interesting principle in our religion. You can admit your fault. But you don't have to go into the nitty-gritty details of exactly what you did wrong to another human being. You don't owe anybody else the detailed explanation of your sin, because that will be opened on Judgment Day, and even then we pray to Allah that He covers that. So for someone else to put you in a position where you have to now, fiber by fiber, explain what is it that you did wrong, in which way did you fall apart. And until you do so, they're not satisfied that you're okay yet. Right? So they're almost taking this godlike position, ma'adallah, and you're just like subject on Judgment Day that's presenting their case. That's not supposed to be the case. Again, in a criminal case, in an actual court of law, evidences need to be presented, where they need to admit what they did. But this is outside of that context. وَأَنَا مِنَ الضَّالِّينَ. I was lost. I slipped up. He keeps it ambiguous. So the lesson here is owning up to something in general enough language to say, I messed up. And the people that have the worst assumptions of you will say, oh, you messed up, meaning they'll assume the worst. And others will assume little. But there's no way you can control any of that. And you have to accept that. This is something Allah Azza wa Jal made as a reality in this life. I'm also reminded of the ifk on Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha in the Madani life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when there was a slander made against her, right? And Allah, it spread so far that even her words were, وَالنَّاسُ يُفِيضُونَ فِي قَوْلِ أَصْحَابِ الْإِفْكِ, in the Bukhari narration, that people they had poured themselves into the words of the people that started the slander. And ifk actually means something bent. And if the bent thing continues, it gets more bent and more bent and more bent, right? So what was being said about her was getting more exaggerated, and more exaggerated, and more exaggerated, and worse and worse. And so many people are talking, and every conversation is different. How is she gonna, manage any of that. Allah just gave her this comfort in His words when He said, لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مِّنْهُمْ مَكْتَسَبَ مِنَ الْإِثْمِ. For every one of them that's slandering you and having those assumptions and having those conversations, they get their share of the sin. So somebody exaggerated a lot, they'll get a lot of the share. Somebody exaggerated a little, they get a little share. Somebody didn't spread it, they get no share. Somebody just passed it on, they get some share, depending on who did what. You can't keep track of that, because a person becomes so paranoid. What did this person think? What did this person say? What did this person say? And this is what's become, our obsession with the comment world, right? So the moment you are checking for validation, what are you looking for? And did somebody say something good about me or bad about me in the comments, right? Because social media has become kind of our check for where we stand in life, our worth in life, which is a pretty tragic place to be. So he says, وَأَنَا مِنَ الضَّالِّينَ. And then he admits something even more vulnerable about himself. He says, at the time, as a result, I ran away from all of you. I escaped from you. And this is him admitting that he was in a place of fear when he ran away from Egypt. فَفَرَرْتُ مِنْكُمْ لَمَّا خِفْتُكُمْ. When I used to be afraid of you. And that statement is also pretty powerful because he's now ready to confront them. And it's an interesting confrontation because the confrontation began by saying, I messed up in the past. At the time, I was from those that were lost. I did do what you're saying. I did make a mistake. And I did run away from you. I couldn't face you before because I was terrified of your judgment. And I was terrified of what you do to me. But using those words also says that this was me in the past. And I went through that phase, but I'm not that person anymore. I don't have those feelings anymore. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm standing here again. I come before you now. And he says, فَوَهَبَ لِي رَبِّي حُكْمًا. Then my master gave me firmness. My master gave me the gift of firmness. Actually, wahab, from Allah's name, al-wahhab. Wahaba yahabu in Arabic is to give a gift. And wahab is the continuous gift giver. From it we get the Arabic name hiba, which is actually a masdar, which just means a gift, or to give a gift. And the idea is that he understands that the ability to make a strong decision and to stand on firm ground, hukum. Hukum actually means decision. It also means wisdom. It also means the ability to make strong decisions, to have strong will. A person with hukum is a person with strong will. My master gave me the power of strong will, is what he's saying, which is it is true, because it takes a lot of willpower to walk back into the kingdom of Egypt, the kingdom that was looking for you as a murder suspect and was ready to kill you. And you have already escaped, right? You're an escaped convict. And you're walking back into the center of authority. You're not just going there and hiding out in a corner somewhere. You're going to the powerhouse itself, the governmental offices themselves. That takes some serious strength. And he's acknowledging something. I humanly did not possess that strength. I didn't have it. This was a gift given from Allah Azza wa Jal. And in it, there's also a lesson. Sometimes our fears and our anxieties are overwhelming. There's no way I can imagine that I can face certain fears. There's no way I can imagine that I can confront somebody that I need to confront. It's too terrifying of a prospect. And it is in those moments that we realize that Allah Azza wa Jal is the one that gives strength. And this is actually a recurring theme in the story of Musa alayhi salam. A human being not having an ability and then Allah giving that ability. Like the mother of Musa, there's no way she could have had the strength to do what she did when Musa alayhi salam was a baby, to put him in a basket. There's no way. لَوْلَا أَرَّبَتْنَا عَلَى قَلْبِهَا. Had we not given firmness to her heart. Allah intervened, gave her the strength, and she was able to do what she did. So we have to ask Allah for strength that we actually don't possess. We have to ask Allah for hukum that we may not necessarily naturally find in ourselves, and Allah will give it to us. And Allah giving special emotions, special strengths, is not something only reserved for prophets. Allah descends from the skies, special abilities, special strengths, special innate qualities, or special qualities that are not innate, that He sends from the skies for His believers. Like He says in Surah Al-Fath, أنزل السكينة هو الذي أنزل السكينة في قلوب المؤمنين ليزدادوا إيمانا مع إيمانهم. He says He's the one who sent down calmness into the hearts of believers so they could have a faith on top of the faith they already had. Because they were so angry that the Prophet ﷺ had signed Hudaybiyah. They were so angry, they couldn't control their rage. What did Allah do? Allah sent a calmness from the sky that humanly wasn't possible. And Allah put that in the hearts of every Sahabi. So what I'm trying to get at is, at the right moments when we have a faith with Allah Azza wa Jal, He will empower our hearts and He will guide our hearts to the emotions that they need to have in the moment. This is what Allah says also in open terms in Surah Al-Taghabun, وَمَنْ يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِي قَلْبَهُ. Whoever has true faith in Allah, Allah will guide their heart. Allah will guide that person's heart. So this is what Musa alayhi salam is acknowledging. فَوَهَبَ لِي رَبِّي حُكْمًا. And then on top of that, وَجَعَلَنِي مِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. And He made me from those that have been sent. He sent me on this mission now. I didn't come here on my own. I have a purpose for which I'm here. And this is the other thing. Confrontation, not for the purpose of confrontation. He's not coming back for the purpose of just having, drama. He's not self-annihilating either. He came back because he was on a mission. Some people love confrontation. Like, I'm just being real. No, you be real for a purpose. Like, is there a reason you're being real? Is there a purpose? Is there a benefit to yourself, to someone else? Is there a prevention of some kind of harm? What reason, what compelled you to engage in a confrontation? Confrontation itself is neither good nor bad. It's the intent behind confrontation. For what reason? What are you hoping to accomplish with a confrontation? You see? Now, some people avoid confrontation at all costs. I'm actually one of those people. I try to avoid confrontation at all costs, right? And that's actually a weakness too. You have to overcome that and realize some situations demand a confrontation. Because without it, you are not able to attain a fundamental purpose. You have to, if the purpose requires that you confront the situation, then you have to confront the situation and get out of your comfort zone and to say what may be scary. He has to say some pretty scary things. Admitting your own fault is pretty scary. Admitting that you did something wrong is pretty scary, and that too in front of someone who can harm you. He's not just doing it casually sitting by a fire in the desert. He's doing it in the court of the Pharaoh. That's scary stuff. But it takes hukm to do that, and it takes purpose to do that. Where did the strength of will come from? It came from the purpose, meaning Allah has given him the purpose of being sent to. It's much bigger than you. There are people that have been enslaved by the Egyptians, and they need to be freed, and you are my ambassador to go free them. So he says to the Pharaoh now this is the remarkable thing we'll end with today. وَتِلْكَ نِعْمَةٌ تَمُنُّهَا عَلَيَّ أَنْ عَبَّدْتَ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ. And that, in fact, is a favor you did bless me with. You did, in fact, do a tremendous favor to me. What is that favor that Allah... So Musa is saying to the Pharaoh, Moses is saying to the Pharaoh, you did, in fact, do me a huge favor. What favor is that? You raised me here. Remember the Pharaoh said, didn't we raise you here all these years? He brought that up in the beginning. And didn't we keep you here since you were a baby? He's acknowledging that now. He's acknowledging it and saying, so I am in no denial that you put a roof over my head. I'm in no denial that the food I ate every single day was because you provided it. You allowed me to have that. You gave security to my mom. You gave security to my family. You gave me security. You raised me here. You educated me here. You allowed me to live the life of a prince here. That is, in fact, and you made sure that I'm taken care of in every way. None of it is being denied, which is, again, a remarkable thing from many perspectives. Here you have two people that you couldn't think are, like when you think of Musa, Fir'aun in the Quran sense, you think of two people on the opposite ends of, like, the hero and the villain, right? That's what you think of, two opposing parties, diametrically opposed to each other, the good versus the evil. But life is more complicated than just good and evil. So yes, when it comes to Iman and Kufr, this side is good, this side is evil. But when it comes to other matters of life, he took care of him, provided for him, gave him love too, protected his family too. He did that. That is a fact. And it cannot be denied. It cannot be denied. What is our tendency as people? Either you see somebody as all good, or you see somebody as all bad. So you are willing to wipe away all the good they did also. Or if you see good in them, or if you see bad in them, then all the bad is all the good is gone. If you see good in them, then all the bad. No, it's not that bad. You blind yourself to the red flags and the bad that's going on. No, but look at all the good they do. So what did Fir'aun want to do? Fir'aun said, look at all the good I've done for you. How can you criticize me at all? That was one extreme. And the other extreme would have been, no, you think that's good? Look at all the evil you're doing. The other extreme would have been, I don't see any good, I only see bad. What Musa alayhi salam does remarkably in this ayah is, that is in fact a favor you did for me. I will never deny the good that you did to me. It's this complicated reality of life that Allah has taught us in this ayah, that sometimes the people who do really bad to you have also done really good to you too. Sometimes the oppressor is also the one who may have been a protector. Sometimes the provider and the abuser are the same. It's not one or the other. It's actually complicated, right? So Allah gave us a complicated situation because life itself is complicated. It's not like a movie or a cartoon where you can have a simple villain and a simple hero, and they're always on the opposite ends, right? It's not like that in life. It's more complicated than that. So Musa alayhi salam acknowledges the favor, but then adds, "An abbatta bani Israel." So you did this favor for me, justifying that you enslaved the children of Israel. Well, he connected two statements that are unrelated to each other. He's saying, the good you have done for me does not erase the bad you're doing to the Israelites. These two things exist at the same time. And you think that I should remain silent about the bad that you're doing because the good you did for me, that good justifies my silence. And I'm telling you, I will acknowledge that good and still speak up about the bad. Right? So this coexistence is an incredible quality that a person needs to have. It's an incredible quality. And there's two balances that we find in this dialogue that I want to conclude with. The first balance was Musa alayhi salam can admit his mistake, his own mistake. So he says, فَعَلْتُهَا إِذَنْ وَأَنَا مِنَ الضَّالِّينَ. I admit my mistake, but I also come with a purpose. My mistake does not disqualify me from having a purposeful existence anymore. So I can admit my mistake, but also say that I moved past it and I'm doing something good now. So he's not condemning himself, even though he acknowledges his own fault. Then the second balance is, I will not deny the good you did. And while I won't deny the good you did, I will also not deny the bad that you're doing. And these two things don't cancel each other out. They don't justify each other. So both of these balances are so important. I have made mistakes, but that doesn't mean I'm all bad. And you have done good, that doesn't mean your bad gets to be erased. You have to be held responsible for the bad that you've done also. You have to be called to account for it. This is a clarity that Musa alayhi salam has it's easy to read this, but you have to understand this is a father figure to Musa alayhi salam. This is the person who raised him, right? I talked in the early episodes of this series about how there's an emotional imbalance. Fir'aun has always been in an emotionally dominant position. He's the father figure. So you're in a pressured position, and he has to maintain this balance inside of himself, not condemning himself, but also not condemning his father figure. And also not having an overly righteous picture of himself, and not overly being grateful to his father and being blind to, or father figure, and being blind to the wrongs that he's been doing. It's a remarkable balance that's been taught to us in life, because you and I are going to face situations where this is going to be put to the test. It's not an easy test to go through. It's absolutely not an easy test to go through. And nobody wants to be confronted with reality, and definitely Fir'aun is not going to like having been confronted with reality in that way. He wasn't able to make Musa alayhi salam sway. Musa alayhi salam in these few words demonstrated that remarkable balance, because you see, and I'll explain this inshallah in coming khutbahs, a manipulative person will try to use emotional language, because once you become emotional, you're no longer logical, right? A manipulative person will try to make you angry, for example. Once you become angry, you can't think straight, right? A manipulative person will make you feel ashamed. Once you feel ashamed, you can't be reasonable anymore. You're wobbly. Your emotions have been shaken, right? And the moment they are able to get to you emotionally, you are in their playing field. Now you're basically caught in their trap, and they get to play with you according to their rules. But an emotionally manipulative person is speaking. Fir'aun is speaking, emotionally manipulative, and Musa alayhi salam is able to maintain logical responses. He's able to see the emotional tactic and say, no, let's balance it. Right? No, I won't accept the shaming. I'll accept the guilt, but I'm not going to accept shaming. You won't take me down that rabbit hole. And I will balance it out. And I'll say I'll still have a purpose. You will make me feel grateful to you, like I should be grateful. Yeah, but I'm grateful to you, but that doesn't mean that that emotion of gratitude is going to balance out or wipe away the crimes that you're committing. So he remains logical. And nothing is more offensive to a person who's trying to get you to be emotional than you remaining logical. Like if you can maintain your sense, keep your cool, then they're going to start losing their mind. I'm not able to make this person shake. I'm not able to manipulate this person because they're standing their ground. And that's actually one of the most remarkable things we're learning from Musa alayhi salam in these intense, emotionally taxing conversations, that we're supposed to maintain our logical, our rational composure. So with that, inshallah ta'ala, I'll conclude today's khutbah. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikr al-Hakim. الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. عباد الله رحمكم الله اتقوا الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. أقم الصلاة إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا.